Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I am your host, and today we're going to be talking about the chocolate life. What is it? What does the chocolate life mean, right? And how does it animate all of the work that I do and the discussions that I get into? But before we get there, what I want to do is I want to point out that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like all episodes of Pod Save Chocolate, are supported by members of the Chocolate Life. So you can go to the homepage of the Chocolate Life. Here it is right now. You can sign up to be a member. There are free and premium members. All those memberships support the work that I do. You can also go to this episode on YouTube and like and subscribe and share with your friends. All of these things grow the Chocolate Life community in ways that are valuable and helpful. And I'd also like to remind you that if you are listening to me today, no matter where you are in the world, if you're on YouTube, you can go into the live chat. If you're in Facebook or you're on LinkedIn, you can go into the comments and let me know where in the world you are connecting from. And if you let me know where in the world you are connecting from, I'll get that shout out up on screen. And you can also just ask any questions you might have about anything that I am saying during the course of the episode. I'll get that question up on screen. I will do my best to answer it. And with that, let's get on to the subject of today's episode, which is, what is the chocolate life? And here is the post for today's episode. I create a post for every episode of the Chocolate Life. It gives a run of show as well as the resources. So you don't have to follow along and grab URLs and details and things like that. You can always go back to the Chocolate Life, and at any point you can go and look at all of the resources that have been prepared for each episode. This, every time, so if you're not familiar, for every single episode, what I try to do is I try to grab an image which reminds me of what it is that the episode is about. And today's episode is about a journey. And it's a journey that has been, 30 years in the making or something like that. And it has taken me around the world. And so I thought that a journey or an image which had some mode of transportation involved. I currently live in Arizona, so something associated with the desert also seemed to be appropriate. So that is the reason for the image on today's post. So I want to talk about what the Chocolate Life is, and I also want to talk about why this particular episode. And one of the reasons why is that I find this conversational format very, very helpful for me to talk through and hear myself talking about what it is that's important to me. And then I can take the transcript of this episode and I can copy it into some sort of text editor or word processor, and I can grab the portions of it that strike me as being important or strike me as being useful and helpful. So this is one of the reasons why I am doing this, is this gives me an opportunity to be able to have these conversations with myself as well as with other people. So when I think about the Chocolate Life, what I think about is a sort of Japanese concept called ikigai. And I didn't arrive at this concept of ikigai early on. It's something that's come to me over the course of the last decade. But originally, there's a Shakespeare quote that I ran across many, many years ago, which is, some people are born to greatness, some people achieve greatness, and some people have greatness thrust upon them. which I changed. This is from Malvolio and Twelfth Night. Some people are born to chocolate, some people achieve chocolate, and some people have chocolate thrust upon them. I think I fit into the middle category. I wasn't born to chocolate. I didn't have chocolate thrust upon me. I have achieved chocolate as a result of a conscious decision to get into the chocolate business back in 1994. And to a large extent, this episode is an exploration of the why and the how, and not a little bit of the when of the chocolate life. I was also inspired in my exploration and in my journey by this quote from George Bernard Shaw, who says that life isn't about finding yourself, life is about creating yourself. And I disagree with this. I disagree with this greatly. I think that the point is that I don't think life is about creating or inventing or possibly reinventing oneself. For me, living the chocolate life is a metaphor for the process of discovering yourself and sharing that self that you have discovered with others. So getting to the Japanese concept of ikigai, I will put a link to a search, probably on DuckDuckGo, where you can find out more about what ikigai is. You'll see some diagrams, typically Venn diagrams, which explain this in greater detail. But there are four main concepts to the concept of ikigai, and how you apply them to yourselves depends on where you are in the world, where you are in Japan, your age in Japan, and all sorts of other factors that come into play when you think about this concept. But the Japanese phrase ikigai translate as reason for being. It's very, very much the same translation as the French raison d'être, which is reason for being. But there is a different way that people in Japan tend to think about raison d'être, or reason for being. So if we think about that concept, ikigai is about the intersection of what you love, what is something that is your passion, right? I know that it says your passion here. I may change that to a passion, right? What you are good at. So it's something that you love to do, something that you are good at, something that benefits the world and not just yourself, right? And it is something that if you wanted to, you can get paid to do. It could be your profession. I suppose it could also be an avocation. And so what I will also do is update this post to think about, to reflect that change in language. So as I mentioned, ikigai is deeply rooted in Japanese culture. And unlike Western ideas of purpose, again, the French translation of raison d'être as reason for being, ikigai is not necessarily a grand scheme for your life. It's not necessarily career focus. The concept of ikigai can be found in small everyday pleasures and routines. So rather than it being the reason for life, it is a meaning for one's life, not the meaning. So it can be a career or calling, it can be fluid or personal. It doesn't require always monetary compensation. For some, it's found in families, hobbies, or community involvement. So the pursuit of ikigai, in Japan anyway, is seen as a lifelong journey, not a destination. What has this got to do with the chocolate life? This, for me, I mean, the chocolate life, what I do, PodSaveChocolate, the chocolate life, the forums, website, all the talking that I do, all the writing that I do, everything that I do, right, is related to this concept of ikigai. It is something that I love to do. It is something that I have fun doing. I mean, I actively seek the fun in everything that I'm doing. Even if we're talking about very serious topics, and there are some very serious topics in chocolate and cocoa, from illegal labor, climate change, many, many challenges that need to be focused, that if you're not careful, you can become dispirited by. So while I love what it is that I do, I actively seek the fun in what it is that I'm doing, right? It's also something that I happen to be pretty good at, right? And again, I love chocolate and I'm good at it. So what does that mean? So back in 1994, I had an entrepreneurial epiphany, right? I had recently been introduced to single origin chocolate. I discovered single origin chocolate on a business trip in the south of France. I wasn't in Cannes as a tourist. I was there for a festival which was held at the Palais de Festival. It was called Melia, so it was an interactive multimedia market. I was there because of connections that I had made through my high tech career, right, in high definition television and multimedia production. That's why I was in Cannes. I had worked with the organizers on the development of the conference program and other aspects because I knew more than the conference organizers did about interactive multimedia in the in 1993, 1994, whenever exactly, yeah, 1993, 1994. And so I was there, and you never know when a small decision is going to have a major impact in your life. And for me, the morning that I was leaving after Mealy was over, I had an opportunity to go to the airport in Nice and go to duty free and spend all my spare francs in duty free at the airport in Nice before I caught my flight home. Direct flight, I believe, to New York, which is not important. It's just a detail that I remember. And I decided instead of going to the airport early, that what I would do is take a walk around town to see if I could find something interesting that I could buy, that I could take home with me. Because perhaps the selection would be better than what I would find at duty free. And who knows how much money I'd actually be saving at duty free if I wasn't buying alcohol or perfume. And at that point, I didn't have anybody to buy perfume for. And I don't necessarily know that I wanted to save $1 or $2 on a bottle of spirits. So I walked around town and I walked into a gourmet food store and saw this huge display of chocolate bars. And I noticed a set of 7 of them, all in white wrappers, all of them with the same illustration of an old church, and all of them with a different word or phrase on the front. And after puzzling through the label, what I discovered was that I had found what we now think of when we now broadly know as a single origin chocolate, which means that each one of the bars was made from beans from a different location and that the name of that place was on the front of the label. So the maker was the French company Bona, and I brought back with me 7 bars of chocolate. So there's a Cote d'Ivoire, so Ivory Coast, Ceylon or Sri Lanka, Trinité, Trinidad, Ecuador. That's 4. 2 from Venezuela, Chihuahua and Puerto Cabello, and I always forget where the 7th one came from. Shortly after arriving back in New York, I had a dinner party, and after dinner, I brought out some of the bars of the chocolate and had a chocolate tasting. So I broke the bars up. I ripped the name of the country off the front of the bar. And all I remember of that evening was that every person had a different favorite for different reasons. Well, it's not all I remember, but that's the key takeaway from that evening. And a couple of weeks later, standing at a Barnes & Noble in front of the magazine rack on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, looking at Architectural Digest and Chocolatier Magazine and Cigar Aficionado and Wine Spectator and other magazines like that, I realized that there were professional critics for everything, but there were no professional critics for chocolate. And so I had this entrepreneurial epiphany in March of 1994 when I said to myself, I'm going to become the world's first professional chocolate critic. And that is the trailhead. That is the moment that I started my journey. I didn't have a name for it yet. I had no idea what it meant to be a chocolate critic. And in hindsight, a lot of this is a result of going back and reviewing my thoughts over the course of the last 20 some odd, 30 years now, is that I realized, again, that you never know when a small decision, so the decision to not go to airport duty free and the decision to do a little bit more sightseeing in the streets of Cannes before I went to the airport, you never know when a tiny decision is going to have a huge impact on your life. An example of the butterfly effect in your own life. And I think that it's important to understand that we want to be open, or we need to be open to that, right? That possibility, that we can't be so focused on an end goal that we don't give ourselves the time, give ourselves the opportunity, give ourselves permission to be able to go and, for want of a better term, smell the roses, to say, ooh, I'm going to open my life up to the notion of serendipity, something unexpected happening. And that's what happened to me on that day. And you might say, hey, Clay, how and why? I mean, I grew up in a household where the idea of infinite possibilities in the future was taught. My father was a mathematician who was involved very early days in computer science, especially academic computing, information management, information retrieval systems, had really, really interesting background and connections as a result of his work at Caltech and Stanford and places like that as I was a child. And I was, regular visitor to the University of California, Irvine, where my father ran the computer center, right? And a huge fan of science fiction from very early on. So I can remember the first science fiction novel that I ever read was called The Space Merchants by C.M. Kornbluth and Frederick Pohl, but an early reader of The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, Stranger in a Strange Land, all of Isaac Asimov's robot novels, as well as I had a first edition paperback of Frank Herbert's Dune. I mean, and that sort of set the stage for being able to step outside where I was and be able to imagine things in a different kind of way. I'm being very vague there. I'm searching for the language on what that means. Right. But my father was also a person who said, I am bored with what it is that I'm doing. I mean, at this point, he's in his 40s, 50s, 1920. So he's in his late 40s, 50s. He's saying, I know I could get academic tenure at this place, but I don't really like academic politics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quit and I'm going to go do something else. And among other things, we moved to New Zealand for 3 years. I finished the equivalent of my sophomore, freshman, and junior years when I graduated at a high school, what they call them college, in New Zealand. And so the idea of, I know that I've been following this path, right? And but right, I'm going to recognize when I'm not having fun anymore. I'm no longer getting the kind of fulfillment out of the work that I'm doing that I feel that I need to get, and I'm going to go look for something else. That modeling of that behavior was something that I saw in my parents from the youngest age. So we were living in Pasadena. My father was at Caltech. I was born in Los Angeles. By the time I was 2, we moved to Palo Alto. My father was at Stanford. Then we moved to New Jersey. Then we moved to Massachusetts. Then we moved back to California by the time I was 6. And we stayed in one place because all 3 children were in the same school system. And the moment my older sister finished high school, we picked up and moved to New Zealand. Right? To follow the opportunity to do something different, to do something exciting, to do something new, different, to learn something new, to take part in adventure. All of those things set the stage for my ability in 1994, after a decade of working in high technology. I had an undergraduate fine arts degree. I spent a year at the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, 3 years working in non-commercial FM radio in Portland, Oregon, moving to Providence, Rhode Island, finishing an undergraduate degree, a Bachelor of Fine Arts in photography from Rhode Island School of Design, 2.5 years doing that, spending time in New York City, working to create a career in fine art photography or commercial photography in New York City. And shortly after graduating, being presented with an opportunity via an alumni connection to join a computer graphics startup. Where did that come from? Well, it just turns out that, at RISD, I took the first ever computer class taught at Rhode Island School of Design, a professor of mine, fabulous gentleman, real huge influence. I got to give a shout out to a gentleman by the name of Mihai Nadine, a semiotician working in the graphics department who taught this class on computing. But the teacher's assistants were graduate students from Brown University's computer science department, working under a gentleman by the name of Andries van Dam. And Andy, as I know him, I feel fortunate that I can call him Andy, was one of the authors of a book called Fundamentals of Interactive Computer Graphics. And it was at the tail end of my career at RISD, the last couple of weeks of school, when I was able to make the connection between, my interest in making images and the connection to my childhood background in computing. And so all of a sudden, it's like, oh my gosh, computers can be used to make photographs or edit photographs or alter photographs or make images. Wow. And we had the opportunity not only to go and visit the computer graphics lab at Brown University, Apollo Domain 10,000 workstations at the time, right? But we got an opportunity to go to MIT, to Cambridge, to go to MIT to visit something called the Visible Language Workshop, a woman by the name of Muriel Cooper. And the Visible Language Workshop was the predecessor to the Media Lab. Nick Negroponte, when he took it over, renamed it the Media Lab. And I got to meet, when I was there, just some really, really fascinating people, some of whom are still, I am connected with after 40 years. Again, this is my story, right? This is what I did. And I realized that not everybody, I want to put that the other way around. I believe that everybody has a similar kind of story that they can tell, that they can go and look at their lives and pick up the parts which are the contributing factors to where they are now and see the connective tissue to construct a narrative that makes sense about why they are doing what they are doing today. And part of this exercise, for me, is going back and doing that exploration of my past and getting things down to words and understanding the influences in my life and what they mean. So it's 1983. I have just spent 2.5 years at Rhode Island School of Design. I've just graduated. I get a call from, or at that point a call, probably not an email yet, from an alumni connection who says, hey, Clay, I have an opportunity through someone I know if you'd like to get involved in computer graphics, because I know that you were interested in computers when you were at RISD. I was living in Manhattan at the time, 9th Avenue between 38th and 39th Street, so just south of Port Authority. And I ended up going to New Jersey, which is where this company was located. And within about 6 weeks was offered a job. And I spent 4 years there. It was my first startup in high technology. I now define startup as any situation where your stock options never rise above water, right? But it was an insanely wonderful time to be involved. You didn't need to know a lot about computers in order to be in computer graphics at the time. Now, fortunately, I had a background in technology. Fortunately, I understood a lot about computers and what they could do, but not a programmer. And my first engineering manager said, Clay, we don't want you to become a programmer. We don't want you to be critiquing the code, right? We want you to be critiquing what's going on the screen. So a lot of my first work was what we would call today user interface development. I was an internal user interface and user experience, so UI UX. That was my first job, right? And I was taking my art background and speaking with artists about how computer graphic systems were going to change their lives and their work lives. And then I started writing about high technology concepts because it turns out I was good at taking very, very complicated ideas and breaking them down into simpler ideas and then explaining them to people. So my first professional writing gig is in 1984. And if we look at the through line of my life, right, my professional life, it is this as a communicator, taking complicated ideas, breaking them down into simpler ideas, and communicating them to people in ways that they can understand. This is what I am doing on TheChocolateLife.com. This is what I've been doing in the forums. This is what I've been doing with my writing and my books and my speaking, and what it is that I'm doing here on Pod Save Chocolate is exploring my understanding of the world and sharing it with you. And this journey has taken me lots of interesting places. So I am a member of the team that introduced the first 24-bit, so full color computer graphics paint system on an MS-DOS-based personal computer in the summer of 1984 at a place called SIGGRAPH, right? Special interest group for graphics of ACM, the Association of Computing Machinery. And it turns out the ACM is how my father got his job when we moved to New Zealand. So there's another connection. But then I worked on 3D modeling and animation systems, and I also worked on business graphics, what today we would think of as PowerPoint. But in 1984, they were discrete standalone systems that were very highly sophisticated. And among other things, I got to work with digital outline fonts and kerning tables before Adobe was a thing. So we bought our font data from a German company called URW. I believe that Adobe bought their original font data or licensed their original font data from URW as well. And then a whole bunch of my colleagues out of the graphic, or my fellow students at RISD in the graphic design department also went to Adobe and in the font design department and other places. I remember 1980, winter of 1984, winter of 1985, a friend of mine had a Macintosh floppy with the first edition pre-launch of Adobe Illustrator. And I got to see that. I've had a chance to in my computer graphics life, travel to England and to Switzerland and to Germany and France, and go through amazingly wonderful experiences from the computer graphics company. I went into private consulting for a while, but then got a job working for the first high definition television production company in North America. So in 1991 and 1992, I am working at the forefront of what we take for granted today. Right? There's more, the camera and the storage on my little $1,000 phone here, right, in every respect is better than $600,000 worth of camera and recorder, right, available in 1991. The only difference is that I can't put, sophisticated, I can put, the only difference is the lenses. I don't have the range of cinematography lenses to put on the camera that I did on an actual studio video camera or film camera, right? But I got to work with just fabulous people, right, pioneering the front end of high definition television in the United States. As a matter of fact, I wrote the first book on high definition television production, as opposed to the politics of adoption. And so I'm continuing this through line that I started in 1984. I've now changed careers out of computer graphics into high definition television. And now I'm writing a book on high definition television production. It's not available today. You might be able to find copies on Amazon. If you search for my name and you search for high definition television or high definition video, you may be able to find a copy of the book. It is woefully out of date. The technology that was available in 1994 and 1995 when I was writing the book has been superseded, right, entirely. But it does represent a snapshot, a capsule in time. I could only write about what I know. I could guess about the future, but I couldn't know. While I was doing these things in the 90s, so at that time, about the time I'm finishing up working for the high definition television production is when I go to France and have my entrepreneurial epiphany about chocolate. These are happening about the same time. I'm embarked on continuing my consulting career. So I'm working with people in the Startup New York New Media Association in New York City. I'm working on my first web development websites. I helped co-found one of the first interactive ad rep firms in the internet space in 1996. We sold that company in 1996. And that gave me the resources to go out and do more interesting projects. And my last job in high technology was 2001, 2002, when I was the chief information officer and chief technology officer of my final internet startup. And so we're taking a lot of the learning that I had done, again, from the work that I had done with my father in a startup in the mid 1990s around information technology and developing a new kind of browser to experience the internet. So, or not browser, but an alternative between Google and Yahoo at the time. So just a new way of thinking about things. Uh, and along the way, my name is on, at least 4 patents associated with the work that I've done. Right? And I say this not to brag, right? But just to talk about why I am where I am and how could I possibly get to where I am? How is somebody who started out thinking about, oh my gosh, right? Am I going to be a fine arts photographer or I'm going to be involved in radio? Because one of the reasons why I got involved in radio is I had taken something in high school called a Cooter interest inventory, which is, what do you like to do? And then what are careers which, right, involve what it is you like to do? And it turns out that being on the radio is what I was most suited for. And this is something I learned when I was 14 and then revisited, several years later. But it is the reflection on these things, which turns out to be very important and what I want every one of you to encourage to do. So there's an aspect of the chocolate life, which is different qualitatively from the concept of ikigai or from most people's concept of ikigai. So I want to explain to you, I am doing what I love and what I have fun doing. This whole notion of cocoa and chocolate is something that I am passionate about. I want to share what it is that I know, and I want to help people, right? And once you've been to a cocoa farm, it's impossible not to feel empathy for how much work it is, how much work it takes to get the cocoa from the tree to your mouth. Which is an experience I had in 2003, the first time I went to a cocoa farm, which was in Ecuador. My first trip to a cocoa producing country, because at the time, although I'd been to Hawaii, there was no commercial cocoa production in Hawaii when I was there. But I'm doing something that I love. And I hope that as you watch me talk and you hear me, you can tell how excited I am. And if you have that same excitement, good on you. I think that's fabulous, right? And I want to encourage that, right? It's also, as I said, something that I happen to be good at. As a photographer, right? When I travel, I document my travels, right? And I use my skills as a photographer to look at the world and to see the world, hopefully in a way that other people don't see. And I use my photographic skills and my writing skills to tell stories about what it is that I'm engaged in. And hopefully they're stories that engage you, that you can learn from, and that you can put yourself in and see yourself in. I'm very, very rarely in any of the photographs that I publish because it's not about me. It's about where I am and what it is that I'm seeing. I'm not a huge selfie person. Right? But that ability to tell stories and make connections, right? And to understand how to tell the story to someone who doesn't have a huge amount of technical expertise, right? And to tell stories to people who understand the technology or the science or the physics or the chemistry or the botany or the biology, all of those things, right? That's the fascinating thing about chocolate for me. Number one is I wake up on any given day. I have no idea what it is that I might be asked to do. And number two is I have yet to find a connection to human experience that can't be connected somehow to cocoa or chocolate. So no matter what I might want to go learn about, oh my gosh, chocolate is there waiting for me just to be uncovered, right? In some new and interesting and tasty and fascinating kind of way. And fortunately, I have a memory, right, for that kind of stuff. Don't know why, but I also have some early childhood training in that as well. Does the world need what it is that I do? The answer is, yeah, I believe that the world needs what it is that I do. It needs an independent observer right? So I have deliberately chosen not to make chocolate. I have deliberately chosen not to have my own brand, right? I have deliberately chosen to be an independent observer, right? To be able to do as much independent research and to be able to provide, well, not unbiased because everybody has a bias, but to provide my take on things. Right? And I did that as the technical editor at International Confectionery Magazine for a bunch of years. I've been doing it on The Chocolate Life since 2008. I did it as the author of Discover Chocolate in 2006, 2007, and I did it as the author and publisher of chocolatefile.com from 2001 until 2008. I, you know, and you know, if I if I think about the book Discover Chocolate, think about what it is that I've done, there are a lot of people out there who are going to see this who said, "Oh yeah, right, I've read the book and it's on my shelf," or "I know the book and it is influential," or "I know somebody." And so I know that the world has benefited, right? Even if they don't need it, I know that the world of specialty chocolate and chocolate more generally, and cocoa more generally, has benefited from the work that I do. So I am providing something that is of value to some people, right? And a lot of people. I mean, there have been something like 15, 16,000 registered members of the Chocolate Life in over 160 countries on every continent but Antarctica, right? As a result of my work, I've given presentations in Portugal and in the UK and in France and Italy and in Brazil and in Japan, as in China. I mean, I've had the opportunity to travel and do things and see things that I might not otherwise have been able to do, right? And along the way, I have been able to share what it is that I've learned and touch the lives of a lot of people in mostly positive ways. I'm hoping, a net positive in all those respects. And it just so happens that, right, right, I've been able to, make a living at what it is that I do. I have been able to make it a profession, not just a vocation. And I think that's for me that's been really helpful. And of course, I can't do this without your support, right? Your membership in the Chocolate Life and your support of the Chocolate Life as a free member or as a premium member is what it is that makes this possible. Or if you've got a business and you need consulting advice, I can share with you all of the things that I have learned. Well, I don't know if I can share with you all of the things that I've learned, but I can certainly share things which are relevant to the challenges that you're facing. So I do believe that I am doing what I love, right? What I have fun doing. I do find that I'm doing what it is that I'm good at, right? I do think that the world, even if it doesn't need it, it has benefited, right, from what it is that I have done, and I've been able to turn it into something that pays most of my bills, right? Um, most of my bills most of the time. And in that respect, what it is that I have done is I have found a way to embody all of the principles of the idea of ikigai, right? But for me, the Chocolate Life adds one more aspect to this, and I think it's a crucial aspect of it. And it's what makes the Chocolate Life different, or what makes living the Chocolate Life different from all of the other concepts of ikigai that I am aware of. And this is why I'm doing this today, because I want to get to this point, right? Living the Chocolate Life adds the fifth element, not the movie, not Lilu. Is that her character, Lilu, in the Fifth Element? Mila Jovovich and Bruce Willis, but not that fifth element. That the fifth aspect of what living the Chocolate Life is all about is about a conscious intent to inspire others to find and follow their own chocolate life, even if it's a different topic, right? It doesn't have to be about chocolate. But my goal here today is to say, I have managed to do this, and there was no plan. I had the psychological makeup, which enabled me to not require a safety net, to not know that, oh, I'm going to get paid every Thursday and it's this amount that I can budget and all that kind of stuff. I am perfectly happy psychologically with that lack of certitude, right? Which you might not have for, but I do, right? But what I have consciously done for quite some time is realize that the real benefit to what it is that I'm doing, if I think about that, does the world need what it is that I do, which is the third element of Ikigai, that by saying I am consciously trying to inspire others, right, to find and follow their own chocolate life. And it's what I want to inspire everyone who watches this to do. Right? And I'm sharing my background, again, not as a humble brag, and not to brag in any kind of way, but it's to say I have led an unusual life. There's nothing straightforward about how I got from where I started to where I am now. There's nothing predictable about that. Nothing. I am dependent, right? Where I am now is dependent upon hundreds and thousands of people whose lives have influenced me. So in 1994, I was fortunate to have discovered the work of the Bonnat family. Bonnat, if you don't know it. They'd been making chocolate since 1884, and it was for the 100th anniversary that they introduced this series of single origin chocolates. And if I hadn't decided to make some random sightseeing trip in Cannes instead of going to the airport, and then decided to buy these 7 bars of chocolate, I wouldn't be sitting here today. Right? Life is about serendipity, about giving yourself permission to go off track and then being open to accept, oh my gosh, here are the implications of that. And to think about, oh man, right, here's an opportunity I haven't thought of. And how do I go process that? And if what it is that I can do is I can encourage you to go and do this own retrospection and look at your own lives and say, okay, so it's not about reinventing yourself, right? I don't think anybody invents themselves, right? I think it's about, how do I go about rediscovering something that I'm passionate about? How do I go about rediscovering what it is that truly motivates me to do something? And then figuring out a way to incorporate it into either a personal life, again, whether it's devotional related to a community or some other thing that you're doing, or to see if I can turn it into, right, a job, a career, which I've managed to do. But I didn't start off thinking that I would turn this into the career that it is. I had no idea. What does it mean to be a professional chocolate critic? Where can I go to learn the stuff, right? Who do I learn it from? What do I need to know? When I started out, there was no infrastructure. There were no schools. There were no places to go learn this stuff. We have some now, right? But when I started out, there was nothing. And I had to make it up along the way. And for me, the journey, the exploration of learning all this stuff, and then to prove to myself that I knew it, turning around and teaching it to other people. That is what it is that I had learned in my technology career early on that I needed to do. I could understand it, right? But I didn't truly understand it until I could teach it to other people. But I am incredibly fortunate that the first chocolate that I ran across, or the chocolate that I ran across that inspired me to get into the business, was the business of the Bonnat family. And in 1998, I sent an email, a cold email off to Stefan and said, Stefan Bonnat, I'd like to come and visit you and meet you and talk to you about this chocolate thing that I'm doing. And he said, sure, come on by. And so I got on a plane and flew to Paris, and then got on a TGV and went from Paris to Lyon, and then got on a second-class train and went from Lyon to Voiron. And I was welcomed with open arms into the factory and the home of Stefan Bonat. That was the first chocolate factory I ever visited, right? And he is a mentor, a colleague, and a good friend. And his members of his family, his wife Elisa, their son Maxime, just really, really good friends. And I cherish that. And if there's an aspect of what it is that I do that is most important to me, it is the people that I've met along the way, right? The people who have shown me kindness, the people who have shared their love for chocolate or something that is related, the little details, um, those little devotions that I have come to appreciate most about what it is that I'm doing. And I hope to be able to, I hope that what I'm doing is I'm sharing all of those things with you right now so that you can understand, right? Uh, why I think that setting your life up, right, to find and follow your chocolate life, right? Again, even if it's not your career, but to find something that you can find and follow as your chocolate life is an incredibly fulfilling proposition. And so my hope is that what you'll do is you'll go away and you'll think about this and you'll go wonder, oh, what are the things that truly interest me? What are the things that I truly love to do? What is the intersection of those two things? Is there something I love to do that I'm also really, really good at? And when I discover, and it may be more than it may be more than one thing. I mean, fortunately, the world of chocolate is so broad that what I can do is I can find many things that I love to do in the context of the world of cocoa and chocolate that I also happen to be good at. Right. So, right. If you find some very, very narrow thing, that may be a little bit harder, but you want to find something that you love to do, something you find fun, something you enjoy doing, and that you also happen to be good at, and that you find a way to share it. So that sharing aspect is really important. When the ikigai concept is something that the world needs, right? It might be something that the world can benefit from, even if it doesn't quote unquote need it. Right? You want to figure out something that is something that is shareable. Now, my whole background on this idea philosophically is rooted in an American philosopher called John Dewey, who wrote a book called Art as Experience, in which he talks about the nature of the artistic process and the object and subject of the artistic process and where art resides. So for me, if we think about the Deweyan background and all of these things, the art object, which is what I make, what is the result of the artistic process, the object has no inherent value. It only has value in that I, as the maker, give to it. So art is the relationship I have with the object and the emotions and experiences which that object I see reflected in that object. And art is also the relationship that viewers have with the object. The object itself has no intrinsic value, right? And so when you're thinking about what the world needs, right, you can have your own relationship with this. And this is one of the reasons why the ikigai concept says, well, it doesn't have to be your life's work. It doesn't have a reason for being. It can just be something that gives you pleasure. And that's fine. Right. But ask yourself, right? If I find it pleasurable with other people, find that they can benefit from as well. So what is the benefit from sharing? Right? So you may decide that you can do this really well and people will pay you for what you do. It's not necessary that that be done. But if in the process of sharing this with other people, the benefit, the need component of it, what you can do is you can be an inspiration, an intentional, conscious inspiration to other people to find and follow the pleasures that you have found. It's a way of making the world more gracious. And I think that one of the things that we need in this time is more people being more gracious to each other. And one way to do that is share that which delights us in whatever ways that we can. I can go make a bar of chocolate. I don't have the equipment now, but I certainly have the background and skills to do it. But I can make a bar of chocolate and share what I delight with other people, and they can share it with me. And it's not the bar that's important, right? It's my commitment to making that bar and the enjoyment that I get and other people get in consuming the bar and thinking about that bar. And this is the nature of the chocolate life. Right? And in the last couple of minutes, what I want to tell is a little story, which is, where did the word phrase "the chocolate life" come from? Because I want to embrace the humor in all of this. Where did the phrase "the chocolate life" come from? My first book was called Discover Chocolate. That makes sense, right? So we're going to teach you, and I also own Discovering Chocolate and a bunch of domain names around the Discover Chocolate concept. Always thinking about business opportunities, and and language. So the first website was called chocophile.com. I registered the chocophile.com domain in like 1996 or 1997. I've owned it for a while. But irrespective of that, one day I'm in suburban Westchester County, a little town called Larchmont, which is where I was living, where my kids went to school. And I had just dropped one of my children off at school, and I'm driving home, and the radio is on. I have no idea what station, and a Ricky Martin song comes on. So "Living La Vida Loca" comes onto the radio. Do, 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 living La Vida Loca, right? And in my brain, because I love playing with language, and this is a childhood, based on childhood games I used to play on road trips during summer vacations when I was a holiday driving to the national parks throughout the Western United States. All of a sudden, "Living La Vida Loca" in my mind became "Living La Vida Coco." La Vida Coco. Do, 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 living La Vida Coco, right? And it hit me that what I had done is I had come up with a domain name that was pretty cool, right? So I went home, literally, I went home. I immediately, when I got in the car, I sat down on my computer and I registered lavidacoco.com as a domain name. And a couple of just saying, sometimes people say, "Hey, Clay, how do you know when you're a complete success in what it is that you're doing?" And I will sometimes joke, well, I'm going to pick up my phone one day and the caller ID is going to say Ricky Martin. The caller ID is going to say Ricky Martin. And I'm going to say, "Hello." I'm going to pick it up because I don't normally pick up calls from people I don't know. I'm going to pick up the phone and he says, "Clay, it's Ricky Martin here. I want to do a cover of my song, Living La Vida Loca, Loca, but I want to call it Living La Vida Coco." That's when I know, that's when I know that I will have arrived. Peak arrival is when I get a call from Ricky Martin asking me permission to do a cover of his song. That realization didn't come to me until quite some time later. But about 2 months or 3 months, I'd have to actually go back and look at the records to find out the exact timing it, is I realized, you know what? I need an English language translation of La Vida Coco, because I had already come up with the idea of living La Vida Coco as a result of living La Vida Loca. That phrase was indelibly, right, etched into my brain, sitting at the driver, sitting in the driver's seat as I'm driving home from dropping one of my kids off at school. I'm sort of like chomping at the bit to get home because, I want to make sure nobody has registered this. I don't know why anybody would have. So it's like, it was one of those flashes of inspirations that I go, yeah, this is it. I know exactly what it is that I need to do. But it didn't occur to me until at least a month later that I needed an English language translation of La Vida Loca, La Vida Coco. And the first thing that came to mind as I was thinking about living La Vida Coco was living the chocolate life. And that's why the chocolate life is called what the chocolate life is today. That's why it's called the chocolate life. Now, the whole idea of applying Ikigai to this didn't come for another half dozen years, right? As I'm going through and I'm trying to, I'm working on the follow-up to Discover Chocolate. I'm thinking about what does that all mean, right? So I'm working on the manuscript of Discover Chocolate in 2006. Started in September, finished it in January of 2007. Discover Chocolate came out in October of 2007, and The Chocolate Life was launched in January of 2008. So there's a roughly 1 year period where I'm having these thoughts, and I would have to go back and look exactly and find out what the dates are. I don't know that it's actually super important that I know the precise dates, but this is what is going on at these particular times. And then what does the chocolate life mean, right? And that evolved probably after 2008. So in a couple of years. So somewhere between 2008 and 2014, 2015. It's not until I have this idea that the chocolate life is about finding something that you're truly good at. This is before I was consciously aware of the Japanese concept of ikigai. I had independently come up with, or I had absorbed it somewhere and I didn't know that I absorbed it, right? But I internalized it. But I was able to articulate it to myself before I was consciously aware of the concept of ikigai, about this idea of finding something that you love to do, finding something that you're good at, finding something that you can get paid for, finding something that other people want. And if you can do that, you can live a fulfilled life. You have found meaning and purpose for your life. And that's a good thing. Right? I think that's a fab. Anybody who can use this process and find meaning and purpose in their life, and that gives other people joy, right, is a fabulous thing. But if you add that next component, right, which is consciously trying to go out and inspire other people by your example, just by my example, I am out there consciously. I'm aware of what it is I'm doing, consciously trying to get people to understand, not to understand, to inspire them to look within themselves and find what they're good at, the intersection of what they're good at, what they love, right? What other people might enjoy, right, from the work that they do, right? And then if they can make a living at it, or make it as a good side hustle, that's also a great thing, but not a requirement. But in the process of doing that, consciously, right, pay it forward. It's a way of thinking about paying it forward. But you're not giving people money. You're not doing it that way. What you're doing is you're inspiring other people, and that's what the chocolate life is. I know that there are people who have read my book, and the things that I talk about in Discover Chocolate have inspired them to make the leap, right, to going from something which is a hobby to something which is an avocation, something that they do every day that brings them joy. And I'm happy. I'm happy with that. I'm very, very happy with that, as a matter of fact. And I want you to be happy with that too. And so I hope you'll find and follow your own chocolate life. And you'll take some of the things that I've talked about today and do this personal assessment of where your life has been and what you've gone through, and the serendipitous moments, right? And look at them through different eyes, non-judgmental, and saying, "Ooh, is there a lesson there that I can learn that I'm missing? How can I go piece these things together?" If you need to do it as a meditative process, if you need to do it as a part of prayer, if you need to go take a holiday, however it is that you do this, I want to inspire you to go and do those things. And then what I want you to do is come back and tell me, right? So if you are a member of the Chocolate Life, what you can do is you can go to the bottom of this post on the Chocolate Life, and you'll see there's a member discussion, and you can tell me what you think, and I will respond to it. I respond to virtually every comment, whether it's on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, or here on the Chocolate Life. But if what you want to do is you want to be a part of the member discussion, you got to be a member of the Chocolate Life. To be a member of the Chocolate Life, you need to go click on the green button up here that says join. If you're not already a member, there's always a free membership. If you do have the resources to support the work that we do financially, I will not say no ever. If you have a business and you need business advice, I do offer consulting services, and you can engage with me as a member that way. So go and become a member of the Chocolate Life and share your stories with me and with the other members of the community. If you don't want to do them here on the main Chocolate Life website, you can go to the forum site. All right, so it requires a separate sign up, but there are forums, and you can go and talk about, hey, allow me to introduce myself, or opinion, or anything that you want to do. You can go here and share with people. I also go and take a look at these. I get notifications about everything, and I will respond to everything that you see on this. You see on either the main Chocolate Life website or the forum site. And please share what you think, share what you know, share what you've learned, because as I suppose, as crazy as it sounds, I hope it doesn't sound crazy, that this is what inspires me to continue the work that I do. You're becoming an active member in these communities and sharing what it is that you've learned is what inspires me to continue to do these things. And I just what fuels my day and puts a smile to my face when I just realize how lucky I am to be doing how fortunate I am to be doing what it is that I'm doing. I have this opportunity, and I have the opportunity to engage with all of you who love what it is that I do and who love what it is that you do. And with that, that's the end of this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. Until the next time, everyone, remember, if you're working with chocolate and you are not having fun, you are doing it wrong. Ciao.